inside of the Saints. Loading.
You know, it is not just a case of physical attraction. I admire her mind, too.
Your co-host.
Host. I'm the co-host.
Yes, you got to say co-host.
Oh, you didn't. I thought
No.
you introduced me.
Okay, fine. I'll say co-host. What's up, Saints? This is DeJounte, your host, and your co-host,
This is Stephen Go.
and you're watching Insights of the Saints. Well. We're back with our first. Well, I ain't gonna say back, but we're here with our first episode. How you feeling, Steven?
Well, it's actually very impressive that we're here today, and I'm actually really grateful.
Facts.
All right, so the first topic that
Well,
we
we
will.
ain't gonna get into that real, let's ease into it. We ain't gotta
Okay.
give them, the whole bulk of the meat. Let's spoon feed him a little bit. Like, let's introduce ourselves. Like, what do you do?
All right, so what I do is that I am running a good. I can't even explain it. I do a lot of things. We'll just say that.
Yeah, he's a jack of all trades. I'm not gonna lie. He can have like 5 jobs in the past 6 months. No, hold on. Before I say that, he not. It's not like he quitting them. It's like he just very multi-talented. He can big in the like the what do you do like in the military? What did you do?
Okay, so I'm a veteran, and a U.S. Army veteran, and what I did was that I worked on helicopters, and it's just a great time just to learn logistics, inventory stuff, to do missions, and so forth. And I have that mission ready mindset, and I hope everybody can understand that I'm always thinking and I never stop.
Oh, so you be like the Black Ops 6 people. Like you be jumping out the helicopters and stuff.
Yeah,
You was shooting people.
no, I
Ah,
haven't done that.
okay. I was just wondering. I just had to ask. I mean, I play Black Ops sometimes, and I be jumping out the helicopter. I be feeling all cool. I'm joking. Sometimes. But anyway, so he is our writer between us. Like I'm the speaker. I'm pretty sure you've seen me on Instagram. Matter of fact, if you have not followed, please go follow Insights of the Saints. That's just what it is. It's just Insights of the Saints. Go follow, go like, go share, go support. We really as a group just trying to bring something good to the masses. So he's our writer and he's been writing on some projects. So tell us about it.
Yes, so for the past 3 months, we've been working on this book called The Whimpering Fool,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a great friend named Johnny
Shout out
Gunther.
Johnny, man. Johnny be behind the scenes putting in work. Johnny, when you see this episode, we love you, bro.
Yes, certainly. And we have we had time to think about it. It's all uh, it is very scattered brain because
Mm-hmm.
I need to work on my outlines, and Johnny has been helping me out with that, with asking great questions and so forth. So, and Dejounte has given me some insights to add to it. But that's the first book, which is called The Whimpering Fool.
So what is it about?
It's about, if you read the book of Proverbs, the whimpering fool spoken in the book of Proverbs, Solomon talks about it as an individual who has not considered the things or the counsels of God, and so therefore he is a fool. However, a saint is called to be wise, and that is someone who listens. And that's exactly why the whimpering fool is contrasted in a way that doesn't obey God. And
Mm-hmm.
that's simple
I
enough.
mean, yeah, even the Bible has talked about a foolish person is someone who doesn't obey. They disregard all wisdom from God. So yeah, it's true. So like, what audience is it geared towards? Like, is it for Christians? Is it for non-believers? Is it for believers? Like, who is it for?
So the intention in the beginning is actually geared toward the modern church. And the modern church doesn't really give credit to God. They they take more of the glory and give it upon themselves. And I write the illustrations.
Hmm.
The illustrations are how can I put this? You've read it.
Yeah, I read it. I mean, he illustrates it in a way that anybody can understand. Like, it's just more so about he paints the picture of showing you how the contrast from modern Christianity versus, I won't say old Christianity, but I would say the true
I
Christianity
say
is different.
orthodox.
Oh yeah, Orthodox, but the original Christianity is different, and I believe it is different. I mean, we see in today, we see a lot more people take more of a, I would like to call it a self-righteous approach. I was just talking about this earlier with one of my peers. Um, I feel like Christianity today is more about self-worship. If I follow these laws, if I do this, then I feel good. But we don't never consider how are we pleasing God. Like when I look in the Bible and I was like reading, I see Noah and I see David, and they were very profound people in the Bible. Like God used them greatly, and sometimes they didn't meet the criteria of what you would call a Christian today. But when I say they followed His word with urgency, when He told them to move, like they moved. And today I don't see that same urgency in Christianity. I feel like they'll be, and this is just things that I've seen, they're okay with following a law and being okay and being complacent in that. But when it comes to following what God is saying actively, because He's speaking all the time, they can't even hear Him. It's like they're literally deaf. God's been telling them to move, do this, do that, and they can't hear Him. But they're complacent in the laws that they have done. It's almost like the Pharisees.
And I like to add on that. So the whole purpose of the whimpering fool is always making an excuse. That's what I've been seeing. There's always a way where they would not consider the other individuals or themselves when it comes to making a decision.
Hmm.
And sometimes those decisions are very important. And yeah, like cut off. But
We're back. Sorry for the
no,
technical difficulties.
that
Sorry. But so back to what you were saying. You were
oh yeah, so I was talking about the whimpering fool and how one needs to consider himself and others. And what I've seen with the whimpering fool is that he doesn't consider uh, his own future whenever he's given the opportunity to make a decision.
hmm
We're living in a fast-paced world
hmm
currently that nobody really gives a second thought. However, if you put the counsels of God over our understanding,
hmm
we will always make the right decision because truth is objective.
Okay. Now I fully agree with that. But I just wanted to add one part because I know I talked about the following the laws. And listen, I'm not saying go out and just live contrary to what is written in the Bible. I'm telling you that there's a certain purpose in an ordinance for the law in the way it should be followed, and I don't feel like Christianity follows it the right way. And what I mean by that is when you look when God first gave man law, which was in Genesis, when he told him, don't eat, it was to govern him from death, to keep him in a boundary that protected him. When we do it today, it's not about protecting us, it's about glorifying us. And that's why I feel like we as Christians we disassociate ourselves from the true Christianity because we're trying to follow this law to make us feel good rather than live it to protect what God's put in us. Because see, Adam had something in him that was so grand that God wanted to protect it. So he told him that law to keep him safe. When we are following today, it's not about keeping us safe. It's more so about I feel more Christian when I do it. When Christianity is not a feeling, it's a lifestyle. I don't feel more Christian by following the law. I feel more safe. I feel more conscious in my decisions, knowing that I'm guided by the counsel of God, but I don't feel more Christian. What makes me feel like a follower of Christ is knowing that I'm listening actively to the word of God that he's speaking currently, because he's always speaking. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I've missed a couple words. Hey, I'm human just like you. I don't want you to see me on this camera and think that I'm, you know, some alien. No, I'm human. I'm I miss words. I fall. We're the same.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. I've made a lot of foolish comments, and my stances can be abrasive. However, this is exactly why I've decided to write something that can help others people make the contrast and have their own conclusion, and that is to understanding can help you.
Hmm.
As example, you many times you have taught me and shown me that understanding is is the toughest way to. Um, it is the most secure way, but it's the hardest uh, desire for us to go after.
Hmm.
And I've noticed that pride and not wanting to listen and having this rushing um, sensation to be right. And God has definitely taught me patience throughout that. And that is exactly why I want to put myself in a circumstance, uh, basically the whimpering fool's mind, and avoid all that in the future.
Okay. Well, little intermission. We're going to give a couple shout outs. First shout out, gotta go to God. All praise, all glory be to the Father for allowing us to come here. Not just as friends, but as brothers to do this together in unison and in harmony with the same spirit. We also just want to thank Him for just
Yes, sir.
giving us this vision. To be honest, this was something that was being in the works for months, a long, long time, and just being able to see it come to life, it's nothing but God. Second, we really gotta give a shout out to Pastor Jack. If you are in the Mansfield area, please check out Walker Lake Baptist Church. It is one of the best churches in Mansfield, hands down. I may be a little bit biased, so I'm gonna say the best, but he really preaches his behind off. He's in the word for sure. So if you're looking for a new church home that's going to feed you properly in the right nutrition in the spirit, please check out his church. Any other shout outs you would like to address? People I forgot.
And everyone that has
Oh yeah, and everyone that
given
has supported us so far.
exactly.
Sorry for cut you off. I just thought about that.
Yep. So we got the the circle that we have is our close personal groups.
Oh yeah, definitely Creston too. The person that you see always on the little photos, that is Creston Winters. That is like our model. You know,
Yes, he does represent inside of the Saints, and this is his hometown, so he's doing a great job at it.
he is. I mean, I'm satisfied with his work. He sit there, he posts, he be doing his little thing. We good. So now we got that out the way. What you got for me, man?
All right, this is the meat that I was looking forward to all along. Just the top. Okay, the topic. All right.
No, what I'm saying is,
Do the title or
yeah, title.
just the title? Forget that. Okay. All right. I am looking forward to this. Thank you,
Okay,
Dejante.
no problem.
The title of this will be Are You Sinning?
Okay, what about it? Like, what you mean?
So, as we both are saints,
Hmm.
are you currently sinning as a saint?
No.
All right.
Well, we don't start there. Let's start. Well, first, let's go back to the word and figure out what is sin. Because I feel like a lot of us get sin wrong, and even I did for a long time until I had teachers teach me what sin is. So if we go to, can you unlock the phone?
It's 0.
Oh, so if we go to Genesis, like let's go to Genesis. Hopefully, my good editing skills will be able to put the scripture in the. No, you're fine. That's our pastor in the back. Hey, Pastor Jack. Hey, First Lady. It says, and this is chapter 3 of Genesis, verse 17. And unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of. Cursed is the ground that thy sake, and all sorrow shalt thou eat of in all the days of thy life. That's KJV. I know y'all Bibles may be a little bit different. Hopefully we change that. But back to the original point. We see that sin was first ever brought to this world when man disobeyed God. He rebelled against God. But that's the action of sin. What is actual sin? Sin is separation from God. How do we know this? Because the moment that he did that, he could no longer be in the presence of God. He was moved. So why is that so important? Because that's what sin is. And the church has taught it to be actions like fornication. No, those are effects of sin. Because you are separated from God, you do things separate without the counsel of God. And fornication is just something, and I'm just using that as an okay. Yeah, it's like I was saying. Sorry for the little technical difficulties. It's our
First
first
time.
episode, so bear with us. But like I was saying, sin is separation from God. And a lot of times in church, we teach actions, but actions are sins. Sins means actions that separate you from God. Sinning is continuing to separate yourself from God. So if you're sinning, that means that you're in sin and you're continuing to separate yourself. If you have sins, that means you have done actions to separate yourself from God. If you're in sin, that means you are separated from God. Now, what other scriptures can go along with what I'm saying? Well, many of you know this scripture, and let's go to it. It's 1 John 3:9. Whosoever is born of God do not commit of sin, for his seed remaineth in him. He cannot sin because he is born of God. So, we see that whoever is born of God did not commit of sin. So now we see that that's why Jesus could never sin, or why he didn't sin, or why he wasn't in sin, because he was born of God. He wasn't born separated. He was born connected. We also know the verse where it says that you were born in sin and shaped in iniquity. The reason why that is important because you see that sin is a position. When sin was talked about, it wasn't talked about as an action in that way. It was talked about being born into something. Now, as an infant, I know I wasn't sinning.
I didn't know what it was.
Facts. I didn't know what it was. Like I was, I couldn't even
I
think.
was living.
I was living, literally. I was eating, pooping, sleep. That was it.
And you wanted toys?
Facts. I wanted toys. I didn't know what I was doing. So you see, you were born into this. You were put there. So if you was put there, that means you could be taken out of it. See, what thing about Adam was he wasn't put there. He chose to be there. And his choice, since we were connected to him, affected everybody. Because he was the source. He was our source. Without Adam, there would be no us. Because that's who God funneled, life through. So we have to see that when we're talking about sin, we have to disassociate actions and state of being. Because state of being of sin is very, very important. Because if we think that we can continue doing something that God freed us from, then we have to ask ourselves, are we truly free? Because in 1 John chapter 3, verses 4 through 6, it says, sorry, I'll be a little bit faster at this once we get used to it. 1 John 4 through 6. It says, whoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. And ye know that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him is no sin. Whosoever abideth in him sinneth not. Whosoever sinneth hath not seen him, neither known him. So now we see that it said, whosoever not, so basically it said, whosoever have not seen him. So whosoever singeth have not seen him. That's what it said at the end of verse 6. Which means that if you have not seen or known, which in that context, known has three different connotations or meanings. If you look up the word known, it can mean intercourse, it can mean actual relationship, or it could be like heard through like information or like education, something like that. In that context, it was talking about heard. So if you have not heard of or seen him, then you would probably still be in sin if you didn't believe after that. Because if we see with the lady who was the what I mean, wouldn't we call her an adulterer when the three men brought her to God because she had slept with somebody's husband?
With husband, yes,
Yes.
that's right.
One of the things that he targeted was go and sin no more. Now you have to ask yourself, if sin was an action, right? And sin was only an action, God would be a liar. Because we know that we have daily done things, even as Christians, to disobey that. So we would still be in sin. So God telling her to go sin no more would be contradicting himself. But the reason why he told her to go and sin no more, because as you see in First John chapter 4, chapter 3, verses 4 through 6, she had seen him. So at that point, if she believed, she could actually go and sin no more, because her position would have been changed in the sight of the Father, because she was now connected to the source that's connected to him. So now we see that as a Christian, I can't continue sinning because I can't continue being separated, because my separation does no longer rely on me, but relies on Jesus. And we know that God cannot separate himself from himself. So I'll always be connected. So to answer your question, no, I cannot still be sinning.
That's good. And I wanted to add that from that story, um, that predicament that Jesus had to resolve is that all those men were viewing her from the
Mm-hmm.
action,
Mm-hmm.
and Jesus proved that wrong.
Yeah. And I didn't even catch that. That's funny that you say that. All those men did view her from the action. And they even wanted her to be consequenced and stoned. But he knew that what he had came to do, and she was paid for, and she was bought for with a price, as we are. So if you're any Christians out there self-condemning, remember, you're no longer there. So you can stop self-condemning yourself for falling and get back up and figure out why. Because there's no more condemnation. I mean, you're good. I mean, I'm good, he good, you good, we good. We
That's
all right.
Romans 8.
Thanks. So what else you got?
All right. You talked about transgressions too.
Yeah.
How are they committed?
How are transgressions committed?
Correct.
Fact. Okay. So transgressions, if we see, is to go against the law of God. So it's basically like in Genesis when you seen that Adam ate from the tree, knowing he wasn't supposed to. That's a transgression. Is going against the law and the word of God.
All right. Yeah, you did bring that up. All right. So, what does living in the flesh classify?
So when you look at living in the flesh, and we see a lot of times in the Bible where it talks about the flesh, most of the time it's talking about a nature. See, when you're living in the flesh, you're living of a nature that's dying. That's why it's considered the flesh, because it's decaying. That this flesh isn't forever. So when you're talking about a nature that is not of God, it's considered the flesh because it has an expiration date. You're going to lead to death. So when someone's living in a way that doesn't glorify God and doesn't work within his will, they're dying because he is life. See, one of the things that I can't wait to speak about is what the tree of life is. It's like when you think about a tree, it's the source of something.
Mhm.
So when you see in the Bible says tree of life, it's saying that life is coming from this tree. Well, what is the source of life? God. So we see that anything is contrary to God is death because it's not connected to that source. So if you're living of the flesh, that means you're not connected to the source of life because there's something about your nature that has not been renewed or transformed. So
No,
what you got to add? I've been doing
I
all this
no,
talking. What
I
about you?
definitely want to add something on this, and thank you for bringing that up. It says here, so the flesh, and the more I read about
Hmm.
how it leads to carnality
Hmm.
and the carnal mind and so forth. I've always seen it as it being a temporal. Uh, it's like it's a temporal solution for something that God has an answer for. However, we choose to get a fix that isn't what God intended to be, and that's how I view the flesh. And I do understand that there's an expiration about it, and that also shows the expiration of the thought process of what the carnal mind can solve, which is a limited. It has limited resources.
I mean, yeah, I would agree. I believe that part of the struggle as Christians is trying to switch from carnality over to a spiritual mindset because we get so, connected to sin being an
Hmm.
action. And I'm not talking about, because it's different words. You have sin, sinning, and sin. I'm talking about just the singular word sin. We get so connected to that being an action, we forget that the effects of sin, which are sins, they eternally keep us, well, not gonna say eternally, but they temporarily keep us attached
Correct.
to physical things and things that cannot fulfill us.
Hmm.
So when we get attached to those things and we continue to stay attached to those things, we build addictions and we build like traps that the devil can easily bring us into. So I feel like you're right. We have to get away from those traps by renewing our mind. It's all appetite based because when we see in the Bible that Adam never ate from the tree of life, he didn't need to. He was connected to the source of life. So he was already feeding from the tree anyway. But we see that the moment that he disconnected himself from the source, and he ate from something physical. Now he needed physical things to maintain, his, not only his physical, but even his spiritual. Because if he's living, then he's able to continue to do the things that God wants him to do in the, in the spirit as well. So we see that once he disconnected from his source, he now needed physical things and things of this world to fulfill him.
Hmm.
That's why God talks about man shall not live off bread alone, but by the word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. He added bread in there because now man needs it, because man had changed his source. So I think that's a very good point that you bring up, especially in today's Christianity, because we're disconnected from the source. We don't understand that He is life. So if we're looking for life and we're looking to change our view, we have to go to the source of life because He's the only thing that can give us the counsel and the wisdom and the guidance and the boundaries needed to operate in life or in the spirit, of course.
No, that's wonderful. I've also told um, to reassure myself that this is something that cannot be seen, or the solution can't be
Hmm.
seen in the given moment.
Hmm.
That's why the flesh usually has a rational way of viewing something in the metaphysical world, and from the spirit. Obviously, God has made it clear that most of the things that we hope for is unseen, and it's always the greatest results in the long run
Yeah,
when we're patient.
patience is definitely a virtue. I've definitely been learning that.
I've
Patience.
always said that.
I ain't gonna lie, over the years, I've really been building up my patience. I wouldn't say I
That's
was
right.
always patient, but I've been a little bit more patient as in the later years. When I was younger, I was not patient.
I agree
You,
with you.
you definitely asked my parents. I was not a patient little fella.
Well, thank you for giving your insight on what does living in the flesh classify. The next question I have is, where do temptations lead to?
Well, when we see the first time somebody was even remotely tempted in the Bible, which was in Genesis, which was Adam, we see it led to sin. Because temptations automatically lead to sin because it is trying to entice you or get you
Mm.
to separate yourself from God. So we see that the devil's main agenda is to keep you in temptation. Because if you're in temptation, that means you haven't made the choice yet. And the reason why I say that is because, and I've been studying a lot about this. When we see the word temptations or temptation, we always see that it's designated with sin. And we always see that it's a choice between life or death. Like if something's tempting you to operate outside of God, which if it's tempting you to operate outside of God, obviously it's tempting you to operate in death. So we see that temptations have to lead to separation, and it leads to separation because it doesn't because the person who's doing the tempting or doing the tempt or trying to entice you, he doesn't want you to, or she or he, the spirit that they're under, they don't want you to actually be connected to the source. They want you to be separate from it. That's the reason why they're tempting you.
So it comes from an evil standpoint.
Yeah, it comes from an evil standpoint. Now, there's a difference between being tempted and then temptations, because we see that tempted in the Bible, God used many times in many ways. It could be tested. It could be like even in Genesis, it talked about how Abraham was tempted by God. Now we know that God cannot, put you under will. Like he's not the one trying to put you under temptations
I see your point.
because
So
he doesn't want you to stay separated.
that's a big difference
But
from.
we see that when it said that God tempted Abraham, he was testing him. So we see that temptations and tempted have two different types of meaning. Temptations usually lead to sin. Tempted can mean many things. It can mean God's testing you.
Mhm,
It could mean the devil's trying to entice you. It can like even God even used it to say people were trying to tempt him, test him,
mhm.
challenge him. So those are two different meanings, but they can kind of coincide with each other in the right context.
Great. And I've seen it, like you're right about that. Temptations does put you in a position,
Hmm.
that is, like you said, it's going to be leads you to life
Or
or
death.
death. That's good.
That's the only thing that you can do with temptation. It's only going to lead you to life or death.
And tempted shows there's a way out,
Yeah.
and with God
Well,
and being involved.
tempted can, I mean, God can test you.
That's
And
right.
sometimes that's what being tempted is.
Awesome.
God will test you and see where your heart is. Now, the reason why it's not temptations when he does it is because he's not trying to separate you.
That's
His goal
exactly
is
it.
not separation. His goal is to
You
test the
hit
heart to see where you are.
hit the nail on the head right there. That's exactly what I'm here on that end. No, dude, that's true. Um, the other question
Hmm.
on that will be: will your soul remain sinful?
It depends on whether you've made the choice to believe in Jesus or not. I mean, it will remain full of sin in a position of sin if it's still there because you haven't chose to believe in the person who's redeemed it. But if you believe in the person who's redeemed it, then your soul can't remain sinful because it's been cleansed. And it's not a continual cleansing. People will say continual cleanse. It's not a continual cleanse. It's a once cleanse because he doesn't have to keep cleaning you. He cleans you once and you're clean forever because he's covering you now. I mean, think of like a cover that could never get stained. No matter how much you throw on it, no matter how much dirt you put on it, it just can't get stained because it's holy, it's righteous, it's blameless, it's innocent. It could never be tainted.
And everything that God does will never be retracted because He's a God that doesn't change.
It doesn't change at all.
No.
And I think that's kind of the issue today is that we think that God can change and he can't. And that's because we lived in this world so long and so many people have changed around us. We go into God viewing him like a person. Like, oh, he's going to change. Oh, he's not going to love me. I know if he did, I
He
know if
always
I
has a
did this.
condition.
Yes, there's always a condition because unfortunately, humans don't love correctly. We love with conditions instead of it being unconditional. I'll love you under the condition you do this. When love is not about a condition, love is about a choice that you make that's willing to withstand any condition. And when you look in the Bible, that's how God's love is. He made a choice at the beginning to love you through any condition, no matter what condition you were in, whether you were connected to Him and you never separated, or whether you separated and had to get back to Him. He was going to love you regardless because that was His choice. So when we come to God, because we've experienced things like this our whole lives, it's hard for us to actually understand His love because we've never had anything like it. So we automatically do something wrong and we feel like he's going to run away from us. That's why God said he'll never leave or forsake you. Because he can't. Because he's made a choice to stay. And once God chooses, it's over.
That's correct. Now we have a choice,
Mm-hmm.
and that's exactly what I've came to the realization, that self-condemnation, which
Mm-hmm.
is why in the Whimpering Fool it talks about the condemnation of a fool.
Mm-hmm.
And we make that choice because God has already displayed his stance, and I've been grateful that um, he gave us a choice to remain or to be set free. And obviously, a soul is made to be set free, and that is
Well, it wasn't originally free to begin with. He's just trying to get it back to its original state. I remember I was talking to Steven over the summer. I was like, what if it wasn't about changing the world, but about reverting it back to this original state? Because I think that we have this mindset that the world needs to be changed when the world was never the problem. It was us. So I think that we need to be renewed, and part of the renewing is reverting back to an old nature. I think since we see in the Bible it starts with sin, we think that we started with sin. When we got to understand that God's thoughts are righteous. So he talks about in the Bible where it says that he had plans for he foreknew he had plans to prosper you, for a plan for a future, like for hope in the future. So we see that his thoughts of you before you got here were righteous. They were good, which means that the position of your soul was in good standing until you entered the world. And now, since you entered through man, you took on its state. So I think that since we don't understand, we're trying to revert back to a state that we were in before we got here. It's hard for us to understand because only thing that we've been taught is we're associated with sin.
Mhm.
Not understanding that wasn't our starting point.
and the system that we were brought up is definitely contrary to what we are going or we have never seen displayed.
Yeah, we've never seen it displayed, so we think that this is our starting point.
Beautiful.
I don't know, and it kind of irks me when I hear Christians say, "Oh, I'm a sinner." No, you're not. Like you're not a sinner. You've been cleansed. Stop. That's like that's like me freeing you from jail, and do you still saying, "Oh, I'm in jail"? No, you're not. You're free. Like you're free. Like you're literally free. Now you can say things like, "I have a hard time following. Sometimes I'm disobedient. Sometimes I fall short." That's okay. But still associating yourself with what God has freed you from is the main reason people stay condemned and chained up because they're still associating themselves with something that God said, okay, I pay for you. Like, why is it so hard for you to believe that the gift of God is so great that nothing that you can do can take it away? Like, it's a gift. You didn't deserve it. You didn't earn it. There was nothing that you did to get it. He just gave it to you because he loved you.
And he showed it, uh, and he will not take back what he has already done.
Mm-mm.
That's exactly that's the beautiful act of God, and not only demonstrated but recorded. And I agree with you. It's
You kids can't take his love away because this is the thing about God. All his everything that he does is ordered, and everything that he does is righteous. He's always making the right move. He'll never make the wrong move. So if God does it, it was already right when he did it. So he's not going to take it away because it was right. Why would he change something that's right? Like when God made everything, it was perfect. It was good.
and it was to last forever. And that's
So
one thing I've noticed.
it's not the it's not the world that needs to change. It's us that needs to be
That's right.
renewed to live in the true principles that the world was centered around. And then we'll start to see a better and brighter, not just world, but a future. I mean, sometimes I kind of feel bad
Hmm.
because I feel like so many people are taught wrong and it's not their fault. Because I feel like Christianity today is more just like it's like a Ponzi scheme, in my opinion.
That's what I'm
Like
trying to get at. It's like the
people
temporal
reel you
fix.
in, they get something from you, and then you send you out into the world. They don't really teach you and feed you how they're supposed to. Like when I look at how they did it in the Bible, it was so much more intentional and it was so much more pure. They focused more on state of being and refining actions rather than condemning you for actions. Like I was just talking about this earlier. I feel like if we seen the Christians of old in today, we would call them like the worst people. And then we end up like Pharisees. And I say that because
Mhm.
they focused so much more on the urgencies of God's word and the state of being and, trying to live a life that's Christ, that's God centered to protect them. But what we do is from a state of like self righteousness, trying to feel like we're that.
We try to validate our own actions every single second to until we reach to the heaven that we expect.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And it's caused so much of a rift in Christianity to where I see so many pastors today, they'll say, if your gospel can't, travel outside of the US, is it really gospel? And I agree. Because if it can't go back to where it started and thrived, then is it really coming from the root? Because the people in all these other countries that's getting fed, the original, they don't want to hear about none of all that. Oh, I'm still in sin. Oh, I'm still in
Mm,
that. What are you talking about? I'm free. And I'm living free.
I agree with you.
Now, when I say that you are no longer in sin, I'm not saying that you can't do things that are disobedient. You can. But when I'm talking about sin, I'm talking about a state of separation that has been closed. The gap has been closed because we now have an intercessor. And that intercessor is Jesus Christ. And because it's God, that will never go away because he can't go against himself.
That was the conclusion. That was the last question.
I mean, I don't know. I think we can go deeper. This is the first episode, so we can give him a little special. We can give him a little special. Let's throw like a little Easter egg. See if they still remember it by the time we get to this topic.
Okay.
What you got? Just throw something at me.
All right.
It don't even gotta be off the paper. It can just be something we talked about recently. Anything.
Let's see here. What was the last thing I talked to you about?
We talked about love.
That's always going to be
Hey,
a
yeah,
great topic.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie.
That's a tough topic. Oh,
I'm not gonna
okay,
lie.
you're good.
Speaking of that,
Get it back on there.
speaking of that, I promise you, every video of our Instagram about love gets the most views, and I'm happy. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, bro, it's so much other stuff on there, and y'all just love love. Like, I'm happy y'all love love, but come on, bro, like, so much other stuff, and y'all only want to watch that particular video. But hey, man, all glory be to God. I ain't tripping.
Amen. Well, that was one of the great revelations.
So, what about love? Like, what should we leave them with? I think I can give them like 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, we talked about love. Does it
Mhm.
always lead to happiness?
Okay. No. And I'm going to tell you why. Because love is not an emotion. See, like when we look in the Bible, right? Let's go to John 3:16, for example. It said, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. In that first part, he said, for God so loved the world, he gave, right? We see that love is associated with actions. Even when God said, if you love me, follow my commandments. Like if you love me, you'll feel something. Like if you love me, you'll be happy. No, he said, if you love me, do something about it. So we see that love is an action. That's the reason why he was able to say in the commandments, and I think it's like the first 10, it talks about, doesn't talk about loving your neighbor.
Yes.
Yes, it calls you to
That's the
love.
first. That's the second one.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It talks about loving your neighbor, right? Well, how would I be able to love somebody emotionally I'm not connected to? That would be impossible unless love is not an emotional connection. Love is an action that is an expression of like sacrifice, what's within you, of serving. So we see that love has nothing to do with emotions. We never see in the Bible anything emotional about love. We see it's action oriented. And I feel like that's been lost because everyone wants to feel something.
Okay,
Because we watch these little cheesy movies
I
and
agree.
Cinderella and the glass shoe. Like he not real. I'm sorry. He not coming for you.
Don't wait. That's one thing I want to bring.
He said, "Don't wait."
That's one thing I want to bring up upon just my own conduct and
Hmm.
so forth. As you know, I do have a I do have a demeanor
Hmm.
that is lacks emotion. We'll say that just because I like
I
to
wouldn't say
think.
you lack emotion, but it takes you to be like vulnerable with the right people in order to show emotion. Like you're just not going to be all lovey dovey to everybody. You gonna be like, "What's up?" If you don't know them. But the people that you actually like cool with, you be chill, bro. Like you be showing who you
Yes,
are.
but I agree with you with the love being
Hmm.
in action. I needed that to hear that in that illustration that you brought up. Yeah, it doesn't always mean happiness due to the fact that just being there for somebody and supporting them, encouraging them in regards to their circumstance.
Yeah,
And we're
that.
always there for a solution. And that's how I view love.
Yeah.
And my dad has always done that without ever saying that. He has a way of demonstrating love like
Hmm.
everybody else. But it doesn't always have to be built up in an emotion.
Yeah, because it's not an emotional thing. See, when we think about love, we think about relationships and we think about all the things that we do. Now, I'm not gonna go full deep into this. I'm gonna, little teaser, but I want y'all to think about this and ponder this. You really like hear me when I say this. When you first got into a relationship and the first time you felt love, we all been in love. Well, I don't know about all of us, but I know I have. It's a crazy thing. Hey, love get tricky. Hey, love. That's a dangerous game. That's a grown man game. I'm not gonna lie, it's a grown man game. But I realized something. It was when you think that you feel love in a relationship, it's really not love. It's attachment. And I say that because just think about this. When you love somebody, you sacrifice. You do things for them willingly. You started doing that, but way before you got attached to a person. That's how you ended up getting attached because you started to do things for that person and you started to be there for that person and then you started to feel. So the action came before the feeling. It would, but this is the difference though. I could do that same action for somebody I don't know and I'll never see again. For instance, if I choose to see a homeless man on the street and give him $100, I work my behind off of $100 and I gave it to him and sacrificed it because I wanted him to have. That's love. But I didn't feel anything because there was no proximity in relationship with him. There was no relationship at all. I just did an action of love and kept it pushing. So you see that love initially has no feeling, but intimacy does because that is the bonding of just mind, will, and emotions. It's a connection. It's a it's a connecting of two souls. So you gotta think when your mind, your will, and your emotions are being bonded to a person, that has some sort of feeling. So what you feel is the connection that you and that person are building. And once you start feeling it, then you equate it to, oh, I'm in love. But you've been doing actions of love. You've been taking her on dates, even though you didn't have enough for it. You've been staying up listening to him late nights, knowing you had work in the morning because you wanted him to be able to vent and be vulnerable. That's the action of love. But in those moments, I guarantee you never said I love you because you were waiting to feel something. You see what I'm saying? But I'm not gonna go too deep into it. But I just want you to ponder that thought. Like really think about it. So what you think?
That's that's wonderful. Yeah, I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, I mean I can't wait to. I just had to leave y'all with some little Easter egg. I ain't gonna go too deep, for
Oh,
y'all.
of course. We got plenty of.
Oh yeah, we got plenty. Stay tuned. You
Yeah,
think we've come to the end?
I believe that everything has come to fruition. Yeah, we got the questions out of the way. What do you have in mind, DeJounte, to close and let the viewers know of
Um
our future episodes? Because this is our
so
first one.
First episode, I believe it was a success. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but I believe it was a success. So number one, like, share, comment, repost. Also, go follow all social medias. Links will be in bio. TikTok, Instagram, even the Patreon, the Facebook, everything. We will be posting daily updates, Instagram content. We grinding all 2024, all 2025, all eternity. We grinding.
Also, the Whimpering Fool is
Mm-hmm.
free. You can read it. Right now, I'm working on with the Pulverized Principalities with Johnny. We're on the editing phase, so um, that will also be released. Now we got a whole volume, 3 volumes total planned out. So I agree with you with not stopping
It's not
ever.
stopping until God stops it. So that's it. Stay blessed, saints. You know, keep your head on strong. Keep your head on the swivel. Remember, the devil is out to try to knock you off your game. So remember, knock him off his head. That's besides the point.